Hello everyone and welcome back to Blades and Blasters. I'm your GM Wanderer and this is another session of Dragonlance Knight's Frontier. With me tonight I have Bo playing Darius, I have Zypher playing Aish, Slip playing Lady Isabeau, and Tetnak playing Rubrum. So we're going to start the session with a little intro. Okay, can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
The arrival of Knights of Naraka has caused much tension in the Salamnic outpost of Norhold. Greatly outnumbering the defenders and allowed entry only after threats of violence, within an hour of their arrival, the unwelcome guests caused a tavern brawl that nearly resulted in the White Hart Inn being set ablaze. The next morning brings dark news that raises tension still higher. But before that, let us return to the night that the Narakans arrived. Lord Alfric, commander of the outpost, has ordered Isabeau, Aish, and the young Salamnic knight Eleonora to secure the keep as the last line of defence in case of Narakan treachery. Tonight, the unearthly howls that have been heard all around Northold for the past 2 nights are strangely absent. A welcome change, but one whose portent is uncertain. The thick fog that rolls over the hills to the north and through the scattered trees seems quiet and still, but anything could lurk beneath that pale cloak. It is the early hours of the morning, and in the dark, foggy, cold night, the young knight and the 2 Salamnic auxiliaries stand guard at the top of the keep, walking and talking to keep themselves awake. So let's go over to that keep. So as a reminder of the layout of Norhold, let's go to here. I think has got a no. Let's not go to that one. Let's go to the map. It's a reminder of the layout of Norhold. You have the down here. You have the central part, the bailey, where all the houses are. But here, up at the north, you have the keep on the motte, the mound. Keep is elevated above the rest of the castle to give it a good field of view, and it has its own fence around it. If this outer bailey falls, then the keep on the motte is the last point of defence, and it's here that they're keeping watch.
And this is the watchtower that looks like it predated all of this.
No, I can show you what it looks like, actually. No, this is part of the outpost.
Okay.
So in design, it looks like this picture on the left. It's quite wide. 3 stories. But the bottom story, there are steps coming up to the first, I guess the first floor in British terms, the second floor in North American terms. Here. But like this other picture on the right, that ground story is stone and it's older. So it's that part that looks like it predates the rest of this.
Got it.
But the 2 stories built above are, in fact, there were 3 stories built above. Sorry, this picture doesn't quite reflect it. But there is a hall here. And above that, there's another story where there are a couple of rooms. One for Lord Alfric and one for Geraint. And then up on the top floor, there's the kind of watchtower. The what would be battlements, but is covered by a roof of which, unlike the thatched cottages in the Bailey, this is a kind of tiled roof. It's got slate that's been brought here to help make this roof, so this roof is a bit more fireproof. Okay.
Well, while we're here and we're discussing Lord Alfric's orders, that we should really do what we can to... Did he mean secure this place specifically, or the entire keep?
He wants you on watch here.
Okay.
So the fence around this, the wall around this, the kind of palisade wall is kind of locked. and Bard. And then you guys are on watch here in the tower, and you're supposed to stay on watch all night.
Okay.
Keep an eye out for anything untoward. So it's the early hours of the morning. It's cold. It's damp. For Isabeau and Aesh, probably neither of you have done anything like this before. Maybe Isabeau has, but certainly not Aesh. And it's just the two of you and Eleonora here.
Yeah. Just to stay awake, she's talking about some of the things that Lord Alfric has spoken to her about. That there's a tower out in the wilderness that he thinks if they could take control of it might hold the key to securing the area. And that she's very curious to study the bottom level here as it appears to be so much older. And she thinks that it perhaps used to be a temple of some sort, as she spent some time examining it. And other than that, she is complaining a little bit that she feels... I feel that, well, there are very few of us, and it's understandable that we're holed up in here. Those Knights of Naraka have all the time in the world out there to plan and to plot and to scout. And if all we do is sit here and wait for them to come, I'm not sure we'll stand against them. We need to find some way to find out where they're holed up, where their strength lies. Perhaps to, when we're able, engage in some stealth tactics. Your friend, Aish, he's a stealthy one, is he not?
Aish has been sitting there in the corner, shivering, walking up and down, stamping his feet. When he joined the auxiliaries, he thought it would be a cush life. Singing songs and getting everybody marching to some music. And, in the evenings, in the Great Hall, dancing and gesturing and, having a merry evening. He thought this was going to be an easy ride, and now he finds himself on this tower, shivering. He's so cold and so miserable that he cannot even bring himself to realize the fact that he's spending the night in the company of two women, but he doesn't even realize any of that, and he's just constantly complaining. And far away he can hear the inn and the shouting, and he can't make out whether it's a fight, but he knows people are having fun and he's not part of that fun. And he can think of nothing else than the other bard in town, and then he kind of comes back through all of that, snaps back to reality and the present, and he responds to Isabeau saying, "You mean the half-elf?"
Is that what he is? Yes, his ears are a bit pointy. He just has a way about him.
Yes, he does. I think that's with the ladies, though. I'm not sure if he is discreet. Is the word, I think?
You don't know?
Yes. You could always ask him, I think. He is an obliging chap. We met in really difficult circumstances. But he did carry himself quite bravely, so I think if you ask him, he would never say no. Well, at least that's the feeling I got.
There's just been a time or two when I was thinking to myself, but not really, daydreaming as such, and I happened to turn and there he was, and I hadn't even heard him approach. I just sensed there's something about him that, well, perhaps a bit of a mystery, but yes, I know we've met, but if you could make more of a introduction, that perhaps he'd be interested in some of my ideas, as I've been trained in the arts of combat, but, well, it's all been rather straightforward. But I think if we're to take on these Knights of Naraka, we might need to think outside the box, as they say. What do you think, Eleanor?
Eleanor, she was listening in, but she wasn't really saying anything, and she kind of starts. And you notice again how young she is at a moment like this when she's unguarded and she's not trying to put on a sort of kind of jaded air to kind of hide her age. You realise she probably is only about 17, 18. And she kind of flushes and says, I don't really know. Truth be told, I only became a knight 3 months ago.
Well, Isabel walks over to her and puts a hand on her shoulder while she's talking.
She smiles at her and says, I've been to that tower you were talking about, though.
You have? Oh, come, sit. And she kind of, stand, as it were, at the window.
There are sort of benches here. You can
Right. Well,
sit
she
down.
just kind of smiles, welcomingly and says, we have to keep an eye, but there's no reason why we shan't chat. I'm very interested in what you know.
You can see her face is looking pretty solemn, even sad, as she considers what to say. And she takes a deep breath and says, well, I mentioned that I was just a squire until 3 months ago. It was at that tower I earned my spurs, as they say. I was squire to a knight of the sword, Rosalinda of Cantor. She was a great knight. The two of us went out with the hunter Osrin to investigate that old watchtower. The Lord Alfric wanted Solinar and the Sylvanesti to come with us, but he did not want to stray so far from his sister's side. You may have seen her. She wears a mask around the town. He didn't want to leave her, so we went with Osrin, and he did find the tower for us. And we entered, Rosalinda and I. I was there to hold the torch and to help her as best I could. But what we found, I can't forget it. The Walking Dead. So many of them. There seemed to be different kinds. Some were just skeletons who fought with swords. Others were walking bodies that were very hard to kill. And the worst were the ones who... And she kind of gulps and she takes a deep breath. Who killed Rosalinda? She killed several of them, but then one of them reached out and grabbed her, and I could see from her eyes she froze. She couldn't move. It wasn't fear, it was something more. She just couldn't move a muscle as it bit her.
When it touched her, she froze.
And she was putting her head in her hands, and she sort of and takes a deep breath and kind of squares her shoulders again and says, yes. She couldn't even move while it killed her. It was horrible. But I managed to fight my way past two of the skeletons and grabbed her body away as it was trying to eat its fill. I managed to injure it with the torch and it stayed back, and I dragged her body out of there, and then Osrin and I fought our way clear. I brought her body back to the outpost. Lord Alfric said I'd earned my spurs and made me a knight next morning.
How long ago was this?
3 months.
3 months.
We thought with the plague. We thought once the plague had passed, we were safe, but no. And I became a Knight of the Crown because no one was here to administer the oath of the Order of the Sword. I would still dearly love to be a paladin one day, but it was not to be.
Calling, I think, matters less what order you are of.
And she kind of reaches out and puts a hand over the breastplate.
And more of what lies in here.
And she doesn't mention that she is one necessarily. But that seems like maybe a private thing. Because that doesn't have anything to do with rank. It has to do with, the god's favor, right? It seems almost like a brag.
Yeah. Oh, shame you couldn't be a paladin. I'm one. Yeah.
Right. But she's just a kingfisher, and they're only auxiliary. And I think that's why she mentions it.
Mm.
There might be a story, about when that manifests, but she's not sharing it, and she's not necessarily mentioning it. But she hopes to give her a little bit of comfort in that.
And she nods and gives a half smile. You can see that she's still very disturbed by what she saw on this night 3 months ago. So this day 3 months ago. She smiles at you though and says, "You sound like Lord Alfric." He said the same thing.
Do you seem to be much of a mind, Lord Alfric and I? And she kind of smiles. I do like that brave old man.
And the Lord smiles again. He says, He's in a tricky spot here though.
He is.
That Corwin seems to know him, and he's done it deliberately. You see, well, you probably know this, but Aesh, I don't think you do. Nightland, you see, used to be part of Solamnia, and it's still claimed by the Kingdom of Solamnia, but we are knights of Solamnia, but we are not of the Kingdom of Solamnia. We are a religious order. So we are not here to enforce land claims. We are here to protect settlers. And Corwin knows that. He knows that even if we had the numbers, we have no grounds to be stopping him and his men. And
I'm sorry, who's Corwin?
Isabeau might not know. So if she asks, Eleanor tells her it's that this is the leader of this group of Knights of Naraka, and he and Alfric seem to know each other.
All right, I'm going to roll
past.
just to see if I was able to not ask.
Right.
But go ahead, keep going. This will be just for me more than you.
There was a bit of in the last session where you obviously weren't there. Your characters would be going up to the keep, but there was a bit of a to and fro between Lord Alfric and this Commander Corwin, and Corwin called Alfric his old friend, and Alfric said, I don't see an old friend, I just see someone who wears the face of someone I used to know who betrayed everything I believe in.
So is Corwin here, or was he visiting?
Yes, he is here. Well, he's with the knights that are staying. He's commanding them.
Got it. I'm sorry, I'm still not quite understanding the hierarchy between Alfric and Corwin.
So Corwin is a knight of Naraka. He's not a knight of Solamnia.
Oh,
the enemy.
And he's got rank here?
No, but he seems to know Alfric. So perhaps he wasn't always a knight of Naraka.
Okay.
The talk of betrayal sounds to you like he was probably once, certainly not aligned with Naraka, but in some way aligned with Solamnia, perhaps even a knight.
As far as I can tell, Corwin is nothing more than a bandit.
Because they ran into him, right?
That's right. Yeah, he was the one who took Baldwin's armor and sword. And Eleanor kind of sighs and says, I don't like it. I don't like any of this. The enemy in our midst, and yet acting as if we're all, well, not friends, but I don't know what they're doing. I think they're enjoying the power they have, knowing that with their greater numbers and their sorcerers, they could destroy us.
And that's, and she looks over at Ayash, why I've been speaking of perhaps we need to think outside the box in terms of tactics. And, she'll start just kind of throwing some ideas out there and, talking tactics and guerrilla warfare, things she's read in history books, that sort of thing.
Ash has no clue what you're talking about because he has no military background. But he is like, his mouth kind of little wide open, listening to you and shaking his head. He's just listening to all these words and thinking about how he can put them into songs and into different stories. But he has no clue but he nods his head.
Yeah,
along.
At some point, Isabeau
You
will
realize
kind of...
like he's like a bimbo, like he's a
Yeah,
male
oh
bimbo.
yeah. Well, but he's here and he's doing his job. And after a while of watching him shiver, she'll pull out her wineskin and she'll offer it to him. And it's actually some decent wine that she's been saving from home. She doesn't drink it a lot, but
He takes a sip of it, and it's been a long while since he's had good wine. And he kind of, his eyes grow wide, and a smile comes back. Yes, that hit the spot. All this talk of treachery and power, and it's sad that people don't take the time to have fun.
well, that's why we need people like you around, Aish. If it were just, well, me and Eleanor, well, we might forget. While we're thinking about ways to keep people alive, why it is we bother even to do so.
Yes, I could not agree with you more. It's important we all live, but every time we do, somebody finds new ways to kill us and destroy us. It is just too sad, just so sad. But I think you are right. I do not know what it means to have a tactic and which box we should think outside of. There are many boxes here in town. But if
Only a
if I
couple,
know-
really.
Yeah, only a couple. But to it seems many. He says, but if I know anything, I do know Darius is a brave man. You should talk to him.
I will. And then maybe they turn the topic to asking Ayash about, where he's from and what life is like there. Because obviously it's a foreign sounding name.
Yeah, and Ayush is telling you about this island far off in the sea. He talks about tales of different dragons he's seen, fantastical tales, right? And the way he says it, you get the sense that he is singing songs of old. But the way he sings them, the way he believes in them, it's almost like he himself has seen all of this. But in reality, when you listen to the songs a little closely, you can see that it has been rehearsed to perfection in his childhood days, and it's
Right. So he's telling a story that's from a song.
Yeah, he's telling a story from a song. Yeah. And he himself doesn't know what is real and what is mythical in that story, but it's just fantastical stories about these guys who went out on big boats and fought dragons far, far away on a larger island that they could see on the horizon, and the dragons did fantastical and varied things. No two dragons were the same, and they all had different names, and so.
Yeah, Isabeau has a real weak spot for dragon stories, and she asks you to sing it in your native tongue. Maybe roll a performance check.
Yes, let's do this. Does the wine help? gives
Nice.
me inspiration.
As long as you don't drink too much of it, I would think so.
See, that's the problem.
I would say that the thing that gives Aesh inspiration, he suddenly realizes he's performing here for a lady, so that will give him advantage in this case.
Yes, let's do this. Performance. Ooh!
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 Oh, oh.
Oh! Wow.
So
it
go
is.
ahead and describe that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's now like I would say 4 in the morning, right? Everybody's been up for a good 5-6 hours. There is a mist kind of rolling out in the distance, but like you were saying, it's receding, but you can see it. The sun's not going to rise for another couple of hours, but and so it's that part of dawn which is the coldest, and we're all kind of shivering, but then we kind of huddle next to each other. The three of us, we are like taking sips from the wine, and you know, Ash starts telling the story about this dragon. Um, it was an orange and green mottle that it was. You couldn't tell it first if it was more green or more orange, and slender, almost snake-like. And this thing would fly in the air and shoot fire and flame and acid at the same time as the story goes. And he talks about this great chieftain who takes a war band of 30 out into the ocean to fight this thing. And the song goes that 29 die and the captain lives, and he's fighting this thing single-handedly. And the fight goes on for days. Every time the dragon gets the upper hand, the ocean helps this chieftain. Every time the chieftain gets the upper hand, the sky helps the dragon, and it goes on. And it eventually stops. Both the dragon and the chieftain realize that they can't defeat each other. And the dragon says, "If we find a new place to live, new place to go to, as long as the chieftain lives, the dragon will never come back." And thus the chieftain was victorious and his village saved.
Isabeau's just like completely enraptured by this. And as you're telling the story and you're kind of going back and forth between telling it and singing it in, a foreign language, she tries to catch on because it's such a complex harmonic melody that's not, similar to the regional songs. She botches it completely, but you can hear her kind of singing it under her breath. It's not that her voice is bad, but she just can't grasp it. It's too foreign, but she obviously loves it.
And when you kind of falter with some of the words, Ash looks to her and he's very surprised that you're trying to learn the song. And he says, "I will teach the song to you, so that you may one day sing it. And tell this tale to others, for it is a tale unlike any other."
And what was the name of the blue dragon?
It has no name. It is beyond compare. The chieftain did not want to sully the great battle by naming it. It was
see that
green and orange at the same time.
She actually kind of wipes like a tear out of her eye. I mean, 25, right? That's critical.
Yeah.
And she nods and she said, "I'd love that. I'd love to learn it if I could. I know I'm no great singer, but I think if you taught me, I could at least do it some justice."
We shall sing it together. I will teach you the minor parts. And then one day, maybe when the time is right, we can both sing it together in an audience.
She smiles and hands him the wineskin, which is nearly empty at this point. Your throat must be quite dry.
as you hand it to him, I just want to see, can you both make a perception check, please?
Let's do this.
Not me. She's even in her mind, even though she's looking out the window at this point, she's still thinking about, in her mind, she's in the story.
Yes, yeah, you don't see or hear anything. Eleonora sort of cocks her head for a second and then just, as if she's listening to something, and then shakes her head and carries on looking out the window. Okay, unless anyone has anything more, we will fast forward till early morning. Okay, so you're on watch, you carry on talking, there's a little singing, you get to know each other better, the three of you. You also learn, by the way, that Eleanor really doesn't like Geraint, because Eleanor is friends with Artesh, the Dragonborn, and she doesn't like the way Geraint
It gives us something else to talk about at night.
Yeah, yeah.
With Isabeau has a thing where she's been raised to not speak ill of people generally, and he is probably her superior, so while it's clear she agrees, she is very indirect about her comments.
Okay. Just before dawn, you hear a shout, almost a shriek from down below you. It's obviously a cry of alarm. It's, apart from being a man's voice, it could well be a shrill scream, really. It's definitely a cry of alarm, and it's coming from inside the keep below you. It seems to be the floor below. What do you do?
I think we all look at each other. And Isabeau says, "What's that?" Stands up and starts running down.
Aish pops to his feet as well, and starts following Isabeau. He doesn't know what's going on, but he knows that that's not a good sign.
And as you go down, you go to the floor below, and in the sort of little kind of corridors outside Lord Alfric's room, you see his servant. He's an old man, and he looks and he kind of points with shaking hands towards Lord Alfric's room. The door is open, and in there you see Lord Alfric on the bed, and he's not moving. And then the man sort of points a finger and says, He's gone. It's the plague. It's back."
Isabeau will rush forward.
Yeah, as
Isabeau plague,
rushes,
stay away.
Isabeau rushes into the room. Aish kind of stops the servant from screaming.
The servant's trying to hold you both back, actually. He's trying to not let you go in the room. He's saying, "It's plague! You'll die too."
Stop. Disease will have a hard time touching me.
Listen,
Wow.
man, let her through. He's her uncle after all.
When it came last time, the plague, our healer and our paladin were the first to die.
She stops, and she detects evil.
Okay. Yeah, you look into the room. I presume that's where you're looking. You can tell me where you're looking.
Yeah, she's looking at him, all around the room, at the servant.
Yep. Nothing in the room. Nothing on the servant. There's a lot of things that are dangerous that aren't strictly
Right.
evil.
So, well, that was the first thing she was checking.
Yeah.
She takes cloth. Everybody's got a handkerchief, and a clean handkerchief, and she wraps it around her nose and mouth, and she says, "I won't touch him. I just want to see." She goes to the fireplace. She picks up a poker. Or some sort of tool, tongs perhaps. And she'll go over to him.
He's lying on his back in bed. He's thrown the sheets half off him. And you see, although he looked completely normal last night, now his face is absolutely ravaged. Boils, pustules. It's really horrible. I won't go into all the details, but it's...
Right. But it's not a stab wound.
No, it is not. No, he's got, all of a sudden he's got really severe plague symptoms. There are many types of plague that ravage the land, but this particular one you haven't seen before, when it's very dramatic, and you've never seen anything develop this fast.
Does he look dead? Is his skin ashen?
Yes.
Just to be sure, she'll hold out like a sword, hold it near his nose and mouth, and just look for condensation over 30 seconds.
There is none.
She'll pull it back.
He's indeed gone.
Does she recognize anything? She's got some healing.
You can make a medicine check.
Actually, she doesn't. I thought I took some, but I don't.
Okay. Yeah, no, you don't understand how someone could get that sick and die that fast, but he seems to have done.
Doesn't make any
all.
sense.
And you can also make a perception check DC 18. No. Okay.
She'll back up.
Yep.
How can this happen overnight? I was just speaking to him yesterday.
She looks over at Ayash.
And she says, can I speak to you for a moment?
Yes, Isabel.
And she kind of pulls him to the side, maybe in the hallway, and she says softly, being careful that no one else would hear.
Darius fellow. Just... would you or he or anyone you know who's here have any experience in poisons? Poisons work overnight, Aish. Not diseases. Not plagues.
I don't know much about these things either, but Darius seemed well-traveled. He might know.
I don't want to insult him by implying that he might, but we need to find out.
Can you make sure that nobody else comes to this room? I can make my way to the inn. That is most likely where I would find him.
I will stand vigil and pray with Lord Alfric. Pray over him.
And Ash kind of looks to the servant and kind of changes his facial features and gives him a very stern look. You will say nothing of this matter to anyone outside. We do not want to raise a panic. You will go about your duties as you always do.
He sort of opens his mouth and closes it a few times. Can you make a persuasion check?
Cool. Let me go. Where's my persuasion? Oh yeah.
He says, very well. And then you see coming along the corridor from the other room up here, looking very bleary-eyed, is Geraint. He says, what on earth is going on here?
Is there a sense motive in this?
There is, yeah. Insight.
Because she's already thinking poison, and as soon as he's coming up here, she's looking for fakeness in his response.
Nice.
Yeah. he seems to genuinely not know what's going on. He is he's confused and annoyed.
Okay. She'll kind of gesture for Ayesh to get out of here before getting involved with this guy.
Yeah, Aish kind of gives her a nod, and hurries out to the side door towards the inn to look for Darius.
The other thing you can think of Ayesh as well is like poison's one angle, so Darius, but the other angle to cover is probably magic. And there's that weird sorcerer that you saw. He apparently he was throwing fire magic around earlier.
I don't know if I saw him.
You
Have we seen Rubram around?
You've seen him this evening, and
Okay.
you certainly saw him throwing fire around in the inn when there was this fuss. He definitely, you could see him in the doorway.
Okay, cool.
Kind of, because he was right next to the door of the inn. They still had the door open while the fight was going on, and he was throwing around a lot of fire. And then it seemed that he and Baldwin went out and had an argument afterwards.
Okay.
But that's kind of all you've seen. But you know that you actually saw him in the mist when you all first arrived. Well, you've met him before, Isabel, and Ayesh saw him in the mist when you all arrived at this place, and then he disappeared.
I will get that weird-looking fellow as well, the one who likes to throw fire around.
She kind of lowers her voice and says, yes, he's strange, but he might have some insight. Yes, good thinking. I'll talk to Geraint. Go.
And Geraint kind of pushes past Isabeau rather rudely. And he doesn't actually shove her out the way, but he just kind of pushes through the doorway in such a way that she'd have to shove him, try and stop him.
Well, she's not trying to stop him. She steps out of the way
stops in
respectfully.
the doorway and just gasps. The plague. Gods above, the plague is back. And he drops to his knees and begins praying to Kirijaneth.
Yeah, she'll kneel aside him, not particularly close, but also...
I thought you said astride him for a second.
Yeah, she's going to
What?
sit, like leapfrog, only land on his neck.
As he prays to the Lord.
It's traditional, okay? No, she'll be maybe like a couple feet, but next to him, and she'll be reverently amening along with his prayers.
Yeah, you got to say he knows his prayers very thoroughly. He says them a little bit kind of by rote.
Yeah,
kind of by rote, rather than with any real kind of sign of faith. But it's oh my god, that gif.
As they pray, she actually gets kind of, she gets a little emotional now because she's thinking less about his prayers and more about Alfric, and she, I would say, weeps silently, like not shoulder shaking, but just like tears of grief coming out of her eyes.
Yeah, he's Geraint, having looked annoyed when he arrived, is now just absolutely cold and expressionless. He's really he's showing nothing. It's almost like a door slammed down.
Mm-hmm.
Ayesh, you make your way out into the Bailey. You come down the steps from down the motte, running down in the darkness, probably holding a torch, I would have thought, to light your steps, worried you'll fall down this really steep mound. And you make your way to the, I guess, is Darius staying still in the inn, or is he now using one of the abandoned houses? Rubram's definitely using one of the abandoned houses, and Ayesh will have seen him go into it earlier.
I think he kind of spilled out into the crowd when the announcement was made that Lord Alfric had been murdered.
That's actually in the future. That hasn't happened yet. We've kind of rewound a few hours to include the others to kind of say what they were doing during the night.
I think he would stay with the other auxiliary.
Okay. So you'll be in the barracks then. So Aesh, you'll find him there.
Ash comes running into the barracks and kind of charges through the door. He looks around. Most of the auxiliaries are deep in sleep. And then he sees Darius's form under the covers, and he kind of goes to his bed and kind of shakes him awake. Darius!
Yeah, it's a bunch of pillows that you put there, and you look down on the other side of the bunk, and he's like kind of looking through the wares of everybody else in the bunkhouse. No. Sorry, that wasn't meant for you. Aish, aren't you still supposed to be on watch? It is a late night. If you didn't see the fireworks and the white hair, well, let me tell you something. This new chap, Rubrum, well, let's just say he's hot company. You seem upset. What's the problem?
And he kind of, before he says anything, he kind of looks around and in a lower voice, it's Lord Alfric. He has died by the plague. The plague killed Lord Alfric.
The plague?
It was overnight. And
yeah, Darius kind of turns. He turns towards Aesh, and you can see like maybe they're both speaking over top of his empty bunk, and they're almost like two teenagers, like, if you've been to a summer camp or something, like talking over the bunk. Everybody else is asleep, and Darius says in a hushed voice, "What do you mean? What do you mean he's dead? He's not dead. He's sleeping one off. Come now."
Yes. Ysabeau suspects foul play. She thinks it's poison, maybe. She wants you and that weird man. She wants both of you to come and take a look.
You're telling the truth.
Yes, I have seen it with my own eyes. I am not drunk like before. Though now I wish I was drunk.
It's not the plague. It's not the plague. Listen to me, Aish. The people here, the not us people from outside, the ones that seem to commune with the dead.
Yes, the Narakans.
Yeah. They're the ones behind this. I'm certain of it.
And we must find proof. Ysabeau was talking about something called tactics and boxes.
Here. I'm short on sleep, but for you I can make an exception. Hang on, let me put this away. And he like empties his pockets of some sort of jewelry that he maybe would steal from somebody and just puts it back where it was. And then he says to Aish, lead the way.
Yes, and let's go find the weird man. They make their way to the abandoned houses. And Aish kind of, without screaming, but like in a low voice, Weird man!
Yeah, there's no response to that.
who do you? Yeah, he says. Who do you mean? The wizard, the sorcerer with hair like blood?
Yes, weird man.
Oh, he's not staying with any of us. I don't want to burn to alive while I sleep. He's over there, and he points to like the abandoned, half burned out building that nobody wants to sleep in. He was not welcome among most of us.
Yes, nobody welcomes the weird man. It is how it is everywhere.
It's why I left my home.
Yeah, Darius. Darius would kind of lead Aesh towards where Reuben was staying, and Darius would try to sneak in, paying extra special attention not to startle Rubrum. In fact, he would, after he would get into the place, he'd be pay extra attention to be loud and like shuffle his feet around and lean on the wall and say, "Well, I hope Rubrum is here. I wouldn't want to get hit with any new devilry, any fireball or other singeing type magic. Rubrum!"
Rubrum's seated in the main room at the table, which is covered in dust. In the corner, in the fireplace, the crackling fire. You notice no wood, but it is burning. And Rubrum seems to be he's doing something with his fingertips across the table in the dust, like drawing something with his hand, and you can't really tell from the angle of what it is. Finally, his eyes peer up as he's looking down enough to take you in, and says, "Yes?"
It
Weird
seems
man.
to me. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Weird man, we need your services. Lady Isabeau wants you to come to the keep. You too, Darius.
I don't know who this is.
Well, she doesn't have any progeny.
Not talking about you, talking about Aish.
Yeah. Who am I? Doesn't matter at this moment. Your services are needed.
I am just a strange, handsome man from a far-off land.
Yeah, exactly.
Rubrum looks up and he sighs. What is it now? That you need,
Yes.
Rubrum? It is early in the day and I am busy.
Darius looks around.
Like,
how
what the
busy
fuck
he
is he
is.
busy with?
He's drawing in the dust.
It's the last thing we would do to want to interrupt your rumination, but it does seem that there is some sort of foul play in the keep.
You're all interrupted at this moment. You hear Eleonora's voice outside in the street, and she's yelling. Her voice is raw with grief, and she's yelling at the inn and the nearby houses where the Knights of Naraka are counted. She's yelling, "Come out, you cowards! You murderers! You killed him! Come out! I'll fight any of you!"
Rubrum
She's got a
quips,
sword
he
drawn.
says, something about that I do expect.
Oh no. Ash kind of runs out of this broken down house towards Eleonora's voice.
And as the light of dawn is just starting to come over the horizon, you can see her there. She's got tears streaming down her cheeks, and she has a sword in her hand. And she's yelling a challenge to any of the Knights of Naraka who will come and face her. And you can see some of them are kind of spilling out of the houses, looking a little bit bleary. But you also realise that most of them are way more experienced than her, and a lot of them have got an advantage in reach, height, and weight over her. So what she's doing is likely to get her killed.
Yeah, Rubrum stands up. He looks down at the table and sighs and takes his sleeve and wipes it off and quips to himself, "Like a child," and shakes his head and looks up at Darius and says, "Well, you've interrupted me. I will go and see what this catwalling is about."
Oh, I'll follow you. Go and see what this catwalling is about. He kind of looks around, making sure that he doesn't bring out anything extra flammable.
No, he snaps his finger and the fire in the fireplace goes out quite suddenly, and he just walks outside.
Yeah, Darius would kind of like shoot Ayesha a glance, like, oh.
Darius is regretting his decision to slick his hair back with lamp oil.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ayesha is now running back to where Eleonora is, and if Yisubo is close by, she would see Ash kind of making it directly towards her.
Yeah, and you can also all hear everyone now is waking up. There's all this fuss in the streets. Eleonora is there confronting several knights of Naraka, and they're really confused about what she's talking about, and they're calling her a liar and saying they haven't done anything, and she's saying, oh yeah, how come he's found dead? You know, she didn't get close enough to see his face, but she could see that they were praying over him and he's lying still in the bed. And she's saying, oh yeah, how come you stay for one night and then he's found dead? You know, Artesh is there kind of backing her up, but also trying to talk her down. And Garen, the man-at-arms who is actually in charge of the auxiliary, he's actually kind of making gestures for all of you to kind of keep it calm. And he's trying to sort of talk her down as well, and saying, but also trying to understand the situation. And in the midst of that, Ash comes running up the steps, probably pretty exhausted by the time he's run up this steep mound.
When Isabeau hears steps coming up, she kind of rouses herself out of her grief, and she thinks quickly, and she turns to Geraint and she says, Lord. And she kind of reaches out and just puts a hand above his elbow.
And he sort of starts for a second and says, yes? What is it, my lady? Oh! He becomes aware of the noise for the first time.
Well, he says, my first concern is for order and for your health. We don't know how this plague is spread. And I think we have done our honor to your uncle, Lord, until his funeral, at least. And I know he would not wish for you to risk your health. And the town, and she's listening, it appears that the news has spread and they will need your brave countenance to keep calm.
You're right. I must leave now. I can grieve later. And he kind of closes
she looks
the door.
at him, like, trying to look admiringly. And maybe he actually sounds maybe sincere, so maybe there's a little bit of sincerity to her.
Can you make what's going to be closest here? It's not quite deception, so I think this is performance.
Okay.
Yeah, this is trying to take something you kind of sort of feel a little bit, but don't entirely feel. Okay, it's good enough. That's good.
Not
enough.
entirely
Yeah.
insincere.
Yeah, exactly. But it's more that you're trying to look more sincere than you.
Right.
You're more certain than you feel. Let's say. And he nods and looks at you and says, "I will depend much upon the wise counsel of good friends, of the right kind of person over the next few days and weeks.
Our families have long held each other in respect." And she kind of bows her head.
So I have recently come to understand. And he nods. And he makes his way down to the keep and then down the stairs here, and he starts yelling for order, and he yells for Eleonora to kind of step back, and quite unnecessarily yells for Artesh to step back as well. Artesh was not really causing trouble.
Artesh, stop causing trouble.
Yeah, yeah. How many times, Knight Artesh? Act like a knight. And then he turns to Garen and says, why won't you take in charge of this? Garen kind of like looks at him like, what? And then he turns to the Knights of Naraka and says, who is in charge here? Where are your officers? And just at that moment, comes walking out the shadows, or in fact kind of almost swaying out the shadows, comes their second in command, Carenza. She's wearing part of her armor, and underneath a padded tunic and some leather leggings. And she basically walks over, and you can tell she's fully aware of the situation, but she decides to just act like it's nothing. She looks and she kind of smiles at all her knights as she goes past and nods. And as they're sort of, kind of say, "Commander, what is this outrage?" She kind of just puts up a hand, like, "It's okay, it's okay." And she comes and gives a slow smile to Geraint, and then just kind of looks him up and down from head to toe, and says, Geraint, isn't it? And you wish to speak to me? And he kind of flushes and says, "You need to take charge of your men." And she says, "Oh, and women, of course," and smiles at him. And he flushes again and says, "Of course, your knights." And she says, "And my men-at-arms." And he said, "Yes, and men-at-arms." She says, "And clerics." "Yes, all of them." And she says, "Oh, please do calm yourself." And gives him another long, slow smile. That he's starting to get the feeling that she's teasing him, and not in a particularly pleasant way either. And then she looks at him and says, "Dear sir, you look a little flushed." And she pulls, she reaches down into her breeches. No, she doesn't. She reaches down into the kind of cleavage of her tunic and pulls out a handkerchief, and then reaches across and dabs his brow with it and says, "There, so much better." I was like, "Bodice." No, she's not wearing a bodice. And he just flushes bright red at that point, and sort of kind of peters off a little bit. At which point she's just standing there, sort of smiling at him, and you notice she's got a little bit of a feral edge to her smile. She's enjoying playing with him. Then out of the inn comes their commander, Corwin, followed by his ever-present shadow, the Thorn Knight, Manus. And he comes over to Geraint and says, "Geraint, isn't it? You're Alfric's nephew. What is the meaning of this outrage? This disturbance? It sounds like there are accusations being made against my knights." And Geraint says, "Yes, and he's still looking very flushed, and he turns around and sees the others and says, "Isabeau will explain."
Yeah, she'll stand up. She follows him out, and had been preparing to stand behind, but she kind of nods Ayesh and Rubram into the room while she goes during this distraction. And she'll stand arms crossed next to Geraint, but also next to what's the name of the Dragonborn knight? Artesh.
It's on his token there.
Actually, it's not showing.
Yeah,
so
we don't
show
see
token
any.
may not be.
Oh, okay.
So yes, you've told us the names, but sometimes I have terrible time. Anyway, she stands next to him and she says, "Lord Alfric has passed. He has passed in a way that seems most unnatural. I think that," and she looks back at Eleanor, "grief has taken hold of those of us who are most close to Alfric. And I know that a man like you will understand that those who are in the throes of grief sometimes say things that are a bit rash."
And he nods, and he also looks across to Eleanor and says, particularly the young, I feel.
And she nods and she looks over at Eleanor and she says, and she kind of puts an arm on her shoulder. This one is pure heart and brave, but still very young. And she looks back over at Corwin.
And he nods, and he looks across to Eleanor and says, young knight, if I were you, I would sheathe that sword. Virtually all of those who face you are more experienced than you.
She leans over to Eleanor, and she puts a hand on, she's got her hand on her shoulder, and she leans over and she says, Eleanor, it's not the time.
Eleanor takes a ragged breath and sheathes her sword. We can't let them get away with it.
We won't. Find Baldwin.
She nods and heads off to the infirmary.
And she looks back over and she looks at Lord Geraint and she says, have I explained it clearly enough, my lord? I'm sure that we have caused enough discord this morning when all we want is to prepare for Lord Alfric's funeral, your good uncle. And she's trying to show deference in the moment to Geraint, so he can save some face.
Yeah, and Geraint nods and says, this is true. We will not serve his memory well by causing a slaughter when we do not know the truth of the matter. Commander Corwin, I would thank you if you and your men would leave as planned. And that's a little blunt. And Corwin kind of looks at him, gives him a long, hard look, and nods and says, it was our plan to leave this day, and so we shall. And then he turns and looks round at the sort of assembled group. There's all his knights there and men-at-arms and all of your garrison and all the people of the outpost. And he raises his voice so that everyone can hear and says, people of Norhold, you have my sympathy. I have known Lord Alfric for many years, and you have lost today a good knight, a good man, and a good leader. And then he looks across at Geraint and says, and sadly he's being replaced by someone who is none of those things. And Geraint flushes bright red, and you see his hands clench and start reaching towards his sword.
Ruben begins
Corwin
laughing.
turns.
Thinks it's funny.
That distracts him, and he looks across at Rubram and says, who and what are you to be laughing at me? Why are you even here?
I was told to come here.
Isabeau kind of whispers, get behind Ish. You're not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be with the body.
Yeah, he never went up. He just
Yeah, I just stood there like watching the show.
Yeah, exactly. Like we were all going to go up the stairs and we kind of stopped and looked at this telenovela unfolding.
She elbows him in a way that he's become familiar with on their travels.
Yeah, and to Ash, like now this is wait, so there's a new story going on? What's going on here? Like,
You don't think I let one story resolve before I start the next one? Come on, it's boring.
he's fully rubbernecking. He completely forgot about Lord Alfric dying over there.
The Knights in Naraka start. He starts yelling. He nods to Karen. She switches modes and immediately becomes very commanding and starts issuing orders for all of them to pack up, yelling threats to those who aren't moving fast enough. And Corwin,
Isabeau will lean over to Geraint and say, remarkable restraint, my lord.
And he nods. And you notice that behind him now is standing a figure in very severe black clothing.
Behind Garant or behind Corwin?
Behind Garant, yeah.
Okay.
And he is he nods and says, quite so. That is the kind of restraint that comes from a superior mind and superior will. And nods to Garant.
I will see
True.
these foul knights, as they like to call themselves, out the city gates, if it pleases your lord.
He says, it does. I will see to my uncle. And he turns on his heels and starts heading back.
Okay, I don't know who you want to do. Like maybe take them up to the room next, but she definitely wants to kind of catch a word with Corwin on their way.
Okay.
Off.
Well, Corwin actually wants to catch a word with her. So, okay, what does she have to say to him? But actually, let's go to them next and then come back to you.
Yeah, that's.
So you guys get an opportunity to head back before Geraint does. He stops to talk to the other sorcerer, Kalinius, and which means Aesh, Rubrum, and Darius have a chance to get to the room first. What are you telling them, Aesh?
Aesh looks to them. I do not know much about medicine or dead bodies, but the servant found Lord Alfric lying like this in bed. He says it's the plague. As you can see, it seems the plague, but Ysabeau thinks that a plague cannot be as fast acting as this. She thinks it's foul play, poison, magic. So I asked you here, weird man, and Darius.
Rubrum does not seem to take offense to the weird man thing at all. He just nods. He's like, it is wise you came and got me. He definitely does appear to be dead.
Now that's insight.
Yeah, Darius circumambulates the room and looks at his face and says, I agree, he's dead. Some sort of pox. What do you expect living in such cramped conditions? This is nothing but a bad coincidence that the Knights of Naraka showed up at the same time. The important thing is that we deal with it with the appropriate political aplomb.
For the Knights of Naraka, you mean?
Indeed, they outnumber us.
Oh, we could have killed them in one night. It would have been easy. Get them drunk in the inn, block the only exit, and set the building on fire. If they try to come out, you cut them down. No one asked me my opinion.
Oh, I know your opinion. And I think your opinion is useful more than half the time. But unfortunately, I think this would... The death of so many innocents would...
What innocence?
Cast us in quite a bad light when it comes to the rest of this outpost. Strange man.
Do you believe any of those people were innocents? I did not mean that people from the town should go and burn. Only our enemies.
There will be a time for that, but for now, this man simply died of disease. And now we find ourselves in a political quandary. On one side, an outpost full of tigers that want to kill us. And outside, we are surrounded by undead wolves and other unmentionable things that will sure us drag us off to the hells if we don't do anything about it.
That would be drag you off to the hells, Darius. Let me ask you, do you have 500 steel? I need a loan.
Yes.
Baldwin is refusing to pay for my meals and I am growing famished.
Debt to the White Hart Inn will be the least of your problems, Rubrum. if we don't get out of here alive. Did you not see that woman? She's powerful.
What woman?
He does a mimic of like a woman with like a dragon helm or whatever that chick has on.
He just
You know?
shrugs. Bah. He kind of meanders over to the bed and looks down and sniffs. He gets really close, like bends his face way down there. I'm gonna do detect magic on him, if possible.
Yeah.
It's my only non-fire
And-
spell, so.
It's probably fire related in some way.
You could always
really,
like burn it.
you get a kind of odd kind of feeling. You kind of see just a very faint glow to his skin. It's a very faint glow to the skin itself, and there's a faint feeling of necromancy.
Yeah, Ruben says, "Oh yes, she is correct. It is magical in nature. Some sort of necromancy. Plah."
Like a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
Necromancy. What foul weirdness is this?
It is to be expected. There is undead outside these walls, is there not?
Undead? Oh, well, I thought it was just people singing out of tune.
Darius goes over to this window. What's everybody doing down in the courtyard right now? Just kind of milling around, or?
The Knights of Naraka are making ready to leave. The most of the inhabitants of Norhold are standing around talking and looking really uncertain and nervous. Lord Alfric was well liked. Geraint isn't. And they're really uncertain about these Knights of Naraka. It does seem like quite a coincidence that they're here and suddenly Lord Alfric dies. So there's lots of rumour spreading from what you can tell.
Not that I have a good roll, but do you care if I make an inside roll to see if I can put 2 and 2 together?
I can tell you what you can tell with an insight roll. What do you mean by put 2 and 2 together?
Does the fact that he died, they're leaving, now we're still surrounded, now we have no leader.
Yeah, you can just make that conclusion. Yeah. So yeah, it does seem very much in their advantage, but you don't know them. You don't know if this is their style.
Yeah, I mean it's not his strong suit, so no, probably not.
You can make a history check to see if you think this is the kind of thing they do.
Here we go.
Cool.
Yeah. Now this is interesting. This is the Knights of Naraka. Back when they were the Knights of Pekesis, they definitely wouldn't have done this kind of thing. These days it's a little bit more complicated. There are groups like this one appears to be who've kind of returned to the old kind of values of a kind of dark honor. They certainly believe in loyalty. They believe in facing their foes on the field of battle. So this doesn't seem kind of the kind of thing they do. But there's always the possibility of, there could be someone amongst their numbers who isn't quite as honourable as the rest.
Okay, so soliloquy time, I guess. So Darius walks slowly to the windowsill and plants his right hand above the windowsill, looking down into the courtyard. The early morning mists are starting to burn off the courtyard, and he sees everybody down below kind of milling about. every once in a while he cannot hear the content of the conversations, but he hears voices raised in anger or heated conversations between the Knights of Naraka and the Slamnik Knights and in the auxiliary. And he says to himself, first, I know that they are a dark bunch, but they hold their own code. Then he turns and says out loud to both Rubrum and Ayesh, I've lived long years and traveled up and down the roads past this stronghold many times, and I've heard all the tales of the Knights of Naraka. And they are in no way good. Their hearts certainly hold darkness. They hold their own code. If you make a deal with the Knights of Naraka, in one way they honor that deal, that contract. This is not like them to murder someone in the dark of night.
No, they would want
I
glory
suspect.
for their kill.
Indeed. But there are always those who throw a wrench in the works of other machinations. I would be not too quick to blame. What's the major commander's Corwin?
Corwin. Yep.
Yeah, Lord Corwin for this travesty, but in no way do I think they should be trusted either.
Of course not.
But what am I? A thief on the run? With little knowledge of such things.
Rubrum looks to the two of you and says, I doubt they had a chance or an opportunity to do this. He was not taking a feast with them. Look for who has been close to him this eve and yesterday, and you will find your murderer. Who is this strange man, not me, that has been hovering about, that was whispering in this Geralt's ear? He looked at me quite strangely. He has magic on him, and the stink of someone that I do not trust. Do you know the one I speak of?
I do, indeed. I know not his name, but he is dark-clad and shrouded in shadows, at least to some extent. I also know he had some interaction with Dalren, the Minotaur.
I would send him away from this place.
And he kind of turns, Darius turns from the window with the light outlining him, and he says, is he not one of Geraint's trusted advisors? This will be a difficult task.
He shrugs. It matters not to me. I only advise.
Before we make any more decisions, we should talk to Lady Isabeau. She had some ideas of her own. You should tell her all of this, and your advice as well, weird man.
She is not a complete fool. Perhaps she will listen. She seems the type to take command, and those will potentially listen to her. Her stature and bearing reminds me of others that I have seen.
As one half of a complete fool, I agree. I'll take my other half, Ayesh, making us one full complete fool, and we will go speak with the lady.
We should burn this corpse in case it is contagious.
Ash looks to Darius and looks back to Rubrum. Before we do anything, maybe we should talk to Lady Isabeau and Lord Geraint.
can see Rubrum's fingers just itching.
Yeah, he shrugs. Very well.
And plus, I'm not sure if you intended to burn it here. If you do, you're going to burn the keep.
It is made of stone. Wait.
And you hear Geraint's voice on the stairs saying, "Burn what? Who's burning things?"
Yeah, Darius will put out the fire in the fireplace just in case it catches.
Just in case. Oh, Rubrum turns at him and says, I was speaking of burning this man, this plague-ridden man, although I think it not a plague, in case it is contagious.
He ignores like the most interesting bit of that sentence and just says, "Burn him. He will be burned, but with honor." And he will be burned on the funeral power.
That's most certainly what Ruben was speaking of.
Is it? I saw his fingers twitch. We'll have none of your sorcery. I saw you in the inn.
I
have
can
no
light the
control
pyre
over
if
that
you
fire.
wish.
We will not have his pyre lit by sorcery! And his voice raises to a shout, and he just yells, "All of you, you rabble! Out! Out! Out!" And he's really yelling at the top of his voice.
You could have just asked. And Ruben turns and just walks out.
"Get out, foul sorcerer!"
I am not a
Yeah,
foul.
half of Norhold heard it. Yes. So
Does he take me
yes,
as a
it appears
bird?
that perhaps he is feeling a little bit more grief than he's letting on. Right, you guys leave the keep. Well, let's take I think it's a good moment to take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
And we'll come back in 5. Thank you, everyone.
Did we lose somebody? Somebody disconnect? Oh, Cypher.
To be fair, he was told to leave. He just took it very seriously.
I was like looking for him. I was like, where the hell is he? I wasn't used to his new name. He left the server again!
Oh, the panic.
Texas is an ugly state.
Yeah.
Yep.
Except for the canyon I went to. That was pretty, but generally it's just tumbleweeds.
It's not, well, where are you at exactly?
Right now I'm in Amarillo and I'm headed south. I'll be working mostly in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Amarillo's middle of nowhere, isn't it?
Yep. It's kind of on just south of the Oklahoma border. I
I've been
guess
there a couple
Texas is
times
a
now.
giant state, so you can't make
Like
it.
even around Texas, like even around Dallas, I never went to downtown, but it's just like flat, nothing.
Yeah.
And it's
Well, that
not
was-
like even cool stuff. It's like strip malls and like dumb
Uh-huh.
stuff.
This town is so trash.
Yeah.
And it was so weird. I heard about this cool canyon and I was like, okay. And I drove and it was so boring and so boring. And then suddenly you're there. It just comes out of nowhere. I mean, it's a hole in the ground, so I guess that makes sense.
This
There's
picture is pretty
a
cool you sent.
there's a place in Alberta, and it's the first time I'd ever seen Badlands. And for some reason, I was expecting the canyon walls to come up. So when it was I was on this really long, flat area for hours, and then it dropped away underneath us. It felt really weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't see it coming. It's so bizarre. It must have been very strange. It's like a pioneer or an explorer in the Old West to just suddenly come upon giant canyons.
That's the way I felt like when I saw the Grand Canyon for the first time. I was like, oh, yeah, it's nothing. And then you just walk up and just like, boom. It's crazy.
This is a great hiking day. This is the second biggest canyon in the U.S. It's huge, and it was amazing. If I'd come like last week, it would have been 90s, but today it was like 80 degrees and windy. Just perfect.
Nice. Yeah. Don't want it too hot if you're walking.
How many dead hookers could you fit in there, you think?
Lots.
So many.
Is that how you rate canyons?
So many.
Yes.
I didn't even see one, though. I didn't even see any garbage, which was really surprising to me.
I'll be right back. I'm just going to grab a parcel.
Cypher disconnected. I've been trying to get a hold of him.
Uh-oh.
He's online, though. I don't know what...
He gets back on. Good roleplay this sesh.
Fighting.
He just had to go pee.
No, he wouldn't disconnect.
Yeah, he just do the Duke.
Lightning storm.
Maybe the chopper descended.
Once the chopper gets too much, then you enter the inner world. You cannot interact with the outer world anymore.
He has transcended.
Yeah.
He's in Nirvana.
He's seeing in 5 dimensions right now.
I do it often.
He's playing 4D chess with Krishnamurti.
I love entering the world of the midichlorians.
Is that what it is? All this time.
Meghan Markle considering running for vacant California Senate seat? No. No. We're in a simulation.
I don't think you should be allowed to do that if you're married to a prince of another country.
There's got to be a conflict
he's
of interest
not.
there.
He's technically not anymore. He's not in the what you call it, the line of
Royal
succession.
family. Sure.
He's
got red hair, so.
But Ruben has red hair, and he is awesome. So.
So
From some
I
angle.
think he has the ism.
I was just mentioning that today, actually, and now that you mentioned that.
That Ruben has the
Yeah,
ism?
I did.
Yeah.
I did mention that he might
he
have the
definitely
ism,
does.
or he acts like he has the ism.
There
He has
was
a chromosomal deficiency.
I was saying that's a ghost today, exactly that.
Yeah.
I did like it though when in the last session when Rubram explained a bit of his worldview to Baldwin, who tried to make sense of it for about 10 seconds. It was just like, this is
You're
madness.
You don't make any sense. Like that scene with I think it was the 7 Psychopaths. Is that what it was called? And it was Colin Farrell, and he was like trying to write a movie script, and it had oh fuck, I'll just find it. I always struggle to explain this movie to people because the plot makes no fucking sense, but it's still so good.
My son tried watching Inception the other day. He said he gave up
Oh,
after
boy.
10 minutes. And I said,
Oh,
if
really?
it's too confusing enough for you after 10 minutes, it's a good thing you stopped.
Wait till you're old enough to imbibe, and then it'll all make
Yeah.
sense.
There was a movie called, I think, Dark City or something. It was this city that
Oh,
there was
yes.
stuff happening in this
that's
city
quite
that
the
moved at
movie.
night.
Uh-huh.
I watched that when I was really, really drunk. And I would just sat there and stared at the screen apparently all through the whole thing. And then I went out and I said something like, "That's either the best or the worst movie I've ever seen." And I don't know.
It's not the best, but I want to go back and rewatch it.
It's an
Going through the
interesting
stages
watch.
of grief in reverse while you're on the couch drunk.
So for
Happiness,
return.
confusion.
Hey, X.
Hey, I'm back.
I
Sorry.
thought you just sort of there just like, oh, this is a crap campaign, I'm out.
Is your computer crash? Is your
He's
computer
playing
crash,
two
dude?
games at once. He's going back and forth. And
Hey, Juan. Hey, Juan, can we meet after the session? I got a couple words of advice.
Yeah.
No, you have to remember X likes combat wall to wall. This RP's boring the shit out of him.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah. And tactical
I thought we were
combat
going to
as well.
burn Alfric's body and let's just go crazy on this town. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Wrong campaign.
I want to. I just don't want to mess up Juan's first campaign.
we were for those that weren't there in the last session, we were telling Tet how we had actually planned to wind him up and act like Bode giving me all this GMing advice and just got really mean about it, and then I was going to quit B&B.
Tet is so good at playing prick characters, like the absolute best. I think he's born with a gene that doesn't
Juan
have that
is.
discomfort that the rest of
I
us
think-
feel when we're being assholes. He's just like, I love it.
I think Juan plays a great prick antagonist.
I did
Tetris
once
practices.
have a character who was such an asshole, but when I brought him back as a villain later on, when I took over that campaign, the party actually tracked him down over different planes of the multiverse.
Must kill
Way
him.
beyond the point I thought they should, yeah. And then they went to great lengths to completely destroy his body and make sure he could never, ever be brought back.
Wait, what do you need
Bad.
for a resurrection spell? Let's make sure that cannot happen.
Yeah. There were
That's how
bits
you
of him
know.
on different planes of existence, like thrown into the elemental plane of fire and all sorts of stuff. It was,
I know we need
did
to
a good
start the game
job.
in a minute. But I played at a great mini campaign one time where the basis was that we were part of a group we were employed by a life assurance agency where rich people could buy policies, depending on the level, where they would send out adventurers to like retrieve your thumb or whatever, your policy level, like you need your whole body for a raised dead. So, you had to pay enough for that. But if a resurrection, they could send you into Mount Doom and recover a thumb and then you were good to go. So we were life assurance agents.
I love it. Okay, should we get back to it?
Yep.
Okay. You can count me down, Tet, unless you've carried on.
Yeah, just keep going.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone. So we're going to pick up from inside the keep here. Darius, Aesh, and Rubrum have all been thrown out. So as they leave the keep, pursued by the angry shouts of Geraint, they find themselves outside. The Knights of Naraka are all making plans to leave. Artesh is up in the gatehouse, watching them, accompanied by Garen. He's a man-at-arms who is nominally in charge of the Salamnic Auxiliary here. So in fact, you in theory report to him. In practice, though, you find he's a good leader of the men-at-arms, but for you, he's not quite sure what to make of you, particularly Isabeau, who's both very experienced and also a noble. So he is really you think he's actually quite laid back, perhaps a bit too laid back to lead.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got a lot of practical experience and he was very helpful. So for example, Aesh, it was him who advised you to take a cloak when you went up to do the night's watch in the tower. Without that, you'd have been even colder than you were. So yeah, he's a decent enough guy. Isabeau, you find that as the others are sort of pursued down the steps by the yells of Geraint, he stops in the doorway and calls out to Isabeau. But before that, I think we should probably rewind a bit, actually, because I just remembered you wanted to speak to Commander Corwin Trulance of the Knight of the Lily.
If someone's calling to her, she'll say, "Might I speak with you in a moment?"
And he nods and says, I think you perhaps have a little more judgment than that one up there. And he nods up to Geraint and says, but perhaps you could try and impress on him one important truth. I have little interest in this gnat bite of an outpost. But if you do interfere with my mission here in any way, I will come back and I will tread on you.
Is this Lord Corwin? Who's speaking?
This is Lord Corwin talking to you. Yeah.
Oh, she says. She just kind of looks like he's talking and she's listening, but she had been so thinking about what she wanted to tell him that it's taking her a minute to process what he's telling her. Like almost like it's not that important.
Yeah. But you do get that last sentence, I will come back and I will tread on you.
And
step on you hard.
Her brows furrow and she nods and she says, I hear your words and I understand their meaning. And she kind of gives just a little nod of respect. She says, might I take a moment of your time before you depart in private?
Very well. And he turns to the Knight of the Thorn, who's always kind of watching him, and says, it's all right, Manus. Go and see to the men. And Manus nods his head and says quietly, as you say, Commander, and steps away. And then he looks round and kind of sees an empty house. It's actually Rubram's house, not that he knows that. And kind of indicates for Isabeau to go first.
Yeah, she walks in curiously, being somewhat aware that Rubram's taken up residence there, looking around at the burnt and, the drawings in the dust.
Yeah, the drawing in the dust is nominally you think it's an image of a woman on the table. It's kind of smeared over and it's not very good, but it's more than a stick figure.
It catches her eye and distracts her for just a moment. Her brows furrowing again before she kind of shakes herself mentally and brings herself back to the moment. She says, Lord Corwin, Lord Alfric spoke of you. He and I had become rather close the past few days, strangely so. And while he felt that the path you walked had taken you in the wrong direction, he never spoke of you as a man without honor. As a matter of fact, I think he held you in quite a bit of respect.
He nods until the last bit and he says, I think perhaps respect is stretching it a little. But he and I were once friends. I was once
a little.
I was once a knight of Solamnia, a knight of the crown, like Geraint there.
Perhaps not like Geraint.
Says, yes, much though I left the order, I like to think that when I was a knight, I was a better one than that one.
Don't know what pulled you away, and frankly, we probably don't have time, and perhaps you would not even have the inclination to tell me about it. Still, I wanted you to know, on the off chance that you still held Lord Alfric in the same sort of regard, and that in your heart of hearts you were feeling, and a tear kind of streaks down her face,
any degree of grief that perhaps your men would not appreciate. I thought you would want to know that he never spoke of you in any degree of disrespect. In fact, quite the opposite. And I think in his heart of hearts he still cared. That there was some part of him that still that young Lord Alfric that loved, that held the friendship of the young Lord Corwin to be of value, to be precious.
And he nods and he looks into your eyes for a long moment without saying anything and says, "Thank you, Isabeau."
And she
I can
nods
see-
and she...
I can see that this outpost has one true leader in it. Sadly, it is not the one who is in command. But I thank you for your words. They are meant kindly, and to show respect to an enemy is true honor.
He did tell me that he thought you are a man of honor. Your own kind of honor, perhaps not the same as ours, but kind of honor that would not wish a man who had lived a life such as Lord Alfric to die in a way so ignominious.
That is true. I will promise you this, Isabeau. If ever I wish you dead, you will be looking in my eyes and you will be armed when I kill you. That you have my word on. That is my way.
Can I roll an insight? Like she
Yeah,
really wants
yeah.
to know if he means this. And
Yes.
she wants to believe he means it. But whether or not she's sure, might be the result of a roll. Okay, so she's maybe, she wants to believe it, but she's not 100% sure.
Yeah. He seems very sincere on the surface. That's all you can tell.
Okay, she says,
When Lady Eleanor, Sir Eleanor, ranted and raved against you, I was inclined.
and she kind of pauses.
If any part of your group were responsible for this, I don't think you had any part of it, or at least I should hope you didn't. And
Any part of my group had any part of this, and you can prove it, and that proof is irrefutable, then they will face Narakan justice. They will hang from the first sturdy tree we find.
She again looks at him for like probably a good 5 seconds before she holds out her hand.
And he smiles and looks at your hand and says, "I can respect your ability, Isabeau, and your honor, but we are not friends." And he
This
gives
is
you a
not
smile.
the hand of friendship. It
Then
was an
what is it?
acknowledgement of your word of honor.
Very well. And he shakes your hand and says, "This is my bond." And then he says, "I must get back to my men and to my women, the brave ones who fight under me. We have business here. And again, I warn you, do not impede that business." And as he says so, his eyes and his tone grows cold.
Yeah, and she
And
backs off.
He makes really long eye contact with her just to make sure she gets the impression that
She's trying to hold her ground and not be intimidated. Like she's trying to show absolutely no fear. I don't know if that's a will save or what. But...
That is, that's going to be wisdom.
All right. Can see how well she does.
Pretty
good.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She holds her ground and she just nods and she says,
We shall both walk the paths that lie before us.
You to your gods, me to mine. And he nods and says, Now I must get to my business. Thank you. And he just turns on his heel. He gives you a little inclination of the head, turns on his heel and leaves. And at that moment, you, as you leave the hut, you see the others coming in your direction. They seem to be looking for you.
Yeah, she turns to them and walks toward them, slowly, thoughtfully, her mind still on that conversation with Corwin.
So the rest of you see Isabeau coming out of Rubram's house, which probably, in truth, Rubram's not sure what's going on there. And Corwin was in there as well. And he walks off and she's watching him leave. I just mean she's watching him leave. She's not watching him leave.
Right.
Man. Yeah, Rubram is actually kind of walking around just idly, almost just like is not paying attention to what's going on. He's walking around the Knights of Naraka and their men and just like looking them up and down, sizing them up. Just in a very non-threatening way, but probably kind of peculiar as he is.
Does he ask if any of them if they have progeny?
No, he is not. He doesn't seem to care about the progeny.
You've never heard him ask that question again, actually. Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, just
yeah. She might hold that to be peculiar.
Yeah, he does take a specific interest in the any of the women, their armor. Specifically, he makes some flippant comments about how it's ugly and, randomly just as he walks by, like that's not how that should be, whatever.
Yeah.
And he just kind of unless he's stopped, he will walk back towards his house.
And for some reason, several of them seem to want to have a duel with you, but their commander steps in and things are sort of calmed down, and eventually Carenza, the sub-commander, walks up to you and says, "Well, hello, you weird little man."
He looks her up and down. He says, "That seems to be a name that is sticking with me. I don't know why."
And she looks at you again and kind of gives you an appraising look and says, "No, I expect you don't." And then she says, "I need you to leave my men alone. My troops alone, sorry." She says, "I need you to leave my troops alone. You're upsetting them. And if one of them sticks steel in your gut when we've said that we're not going to start anything, it's going to cause trouble. So I just need you to run along like a good little sorcerer." "Yes."
He kind of tilts his head and he's like, "What color is your hair?"
She looks and says, "Well, it's not the same color as yours, if that's what you mean."
"No, I just asked what color it was."
She quirks an eyebrow and says, and for the first time since you've seen her look uncertain, she looks uncertain and says, "It's dark, raven black."
Unfortunate. And he just immediately turns and walks off.
And behind you, you hear her say, "Ha!" and laugh.
I think Isabeau kind of notices you, but like she's worried that something's gonna happen.
Yeah, he's just,
now.
Everybody's probably looking at him. He's causing a scene, and he just heads back over and he says, "Are you done with your chat with that old fellow?"
Yes. What? Wait. And she says, "Come," and she kind of looks at Darius, and and she says. She kind of gestures you, to come maybe back into Rubram's house. "Did you have a look at my Lord Alfric?"
Yeah, Rubram walks back in and snaps his fingers, and the fire lights up again, and he goes and sits down on one of the chairs. He doesn't say anything.
Yeah, Darius would come in as well.
"Well, what do you think?" And she kind of looks at all three.
poison? Something arcane?
I simply don't know. And Darius kind of walks around and spreads his hand up. He looks as if he died from natural causes, but...
It's impossible. It's impossible. I
know,
spoke to
I know.
him yesterday, and he was, for a man his age, in perfect health.
Aish, Ruben looks to Aish and then Darius and then back to her and says, "These two, well, at least this one," he nods to Darius, "has some sort of memory issue. Kicked in the head by a horse, were you?"
Were you kicked in the head? She kind of goes over and, looks concerned.
I've been kicked in the head many times. By horses, mules, men, women, demons, angels. Yes, all of it. But I still have a good mind for this sort of thing. And these knights would not have killed him in such a dishonorable way. Does this make sense? There was someone within this keep, within this settlement, that wanted Lord Alfric dead.
I agree. I most certainly agree.
You know the gif of the puppet with the mouth wide open, completely flabbergasted? That's
yeah.
what Rubrum does as he looks to Aish and he's like, "We just had this conversation. I am very confused." Yes, exactly.
What? Did you have a look, Rubrum? With your... Well, I know sometimes you see things others don't. What did you think?
Oh,
What do your sorceress eyes see?
yeah. Oh, it is necromancy, certainly.
Necromancy! And she kind of smacks herself on the forehead. Why didn't I not think of that? Of course! And she kind of clenches her fist. She says, but I don't think that Lord Corwin is a part of it. If it wasn't him. And she kind of looks at the others.
Well, who has been...
It's the advisor. It's the advisor.
Who has been with the Lord lately? Not any of them that flee this place. It is the strange
Certainly
one.
not.
Not me, the other one.
The one who shadows Grant.
Likely.
That occurred to me. I know nothing of this man. How can he have been... It's as if I knew he was here, but it was hard for me to even remember him. He has a way about him, almost like you. Almost like you, Darius. But different. As
Yes,
if the way
not
you
quite
have of
handsome.
slipping up on someone
Yes, that too.
and you're suddenly there, only for him it's almost as if in the mind.
Listen, we know that Geraint is not loved amongst the soldiers, but none of the soldiers here, the auxiliary, would think of killing Lord Corwin and replacing him with Geraint. It makes no sense.
Unless Geraint wishes to take control. Or,
May well
or if the advisor wishes to take control, it could not be him directly, perhaps. There are many schemes
Isabel's biting her
that
lip at
people
that.
get up to.
Some men make puppets of wolves. Some men make puppets of other men. This advisor may be one such man.
Geraint,
As Corwin said, Geraint is, yes, the nephew of Lord Corwin, but he is a weakling. He's not fit to lead this outpost. Even I can see that. And I am no commander.
I thought little of Grant would be true, to speak true. And I must admit I looked upon him with suspicion when he first entered Lord Alfric's chambers. But his grief, it seems genuine to me. I think Lord Alfric did indeed love him as a son, and Gurund was not entirely inured to that. Puppets. I think the weak, vulnerable, are most easily made that way. Did you not see how indifferent he was to me when we first came, and it took only a few words in that most magical but non-magical language of flattery to change his tone. If this man has been whispering in his ear all along. And she looks over at Rubram and the others. I think you might be correct. Perhaps he has designs. Either working with someone else within the Knights of Naraka, but not Lord Corwin, to weaken our hold here. Yes, that is what I think. That is what I think. I don't think he's working alone. Why would he weaken the place? Having a weak leader is something if the rest of us are strong, but we are vulnerable here. But if he was working with someone within the Knights of Naraka, that would make sense. And she kind of looks at the others for their thoughts on that.
Rubram seems like he's not paying attention any longer. He's kind of riding on the...
Rubram!
What? Huh? Oh, I do not know. We should kill him.
She kind of shrugs and says, that's definitely within the realm of possibility. And she looks at the others. Aish, you are not military, but perhaps a student of human nature. What say you?
I say, it is hard to trust in times like these. The Narakans are at the gates, and within the keep there seems to be a traitor, or traitors. May not be clear as to what their goals and aims are, but in my experience, when one is to throw light on that which does not want to be seen, then you can see unexpected things happen. Maybe, just maybe, this keep needs new leadership first, before anything else. Once we have new leadership, we can then find our way to strength. And through there we can keep the people of this keep secure. If we act in that way, it might be clear what we must do.
Rubram's nodding. He says, yes, yes. He stands up and kind of slaps the table and says, I accept. I will be your leader.
No, weird man. You are too much. You
You're
are
just
too
too much.
Too much. You are too much. Too much. A weird man cannot be leader. It is too much power.
Your wisdom is more suited to lead from the shadows. Rubram. Your fire burns too bright.
This is true. He sits back down and contemplates it.
Darius leans into Isabel. Good line, that
one. Darius gives Isabel a nod. Game, no game.
And what of you, Darius? What is your take?
Oh,
What do you think of this shadow man?
I wholeheartedly agree. Rubram should not be the leader.
If only Baldwin were of the order. He has so much experience.
I will talk to him and convince him.
Baldwin is no fun. Here, listen.
Would you be fun, dude? Your face look like that?
The three of you.
He's just no
Three of
fun.
you.
What's the matter with
We
that
need-
guy?
This
This
life-changing
is getting
What a
wild
stick
for
in the
real.
mud.
we want that's good and a little bit of fun. And there's nobody more fun than Yisabota.
She kind of, if you actually say that out loud, she like just looks like completely weirded out.
It's like, is he drunk?
Yeah.
It's 4
She said-
a.m. No, it's like
no,
6 a.m.
No, for real, Darius, he spins around and he kind of brings his hands together and kind of does the old pacing back and forth, rubbing the hands together. Every once in a while, he caresses his thick, luxurious, dark, non-red hair, and he brings out this like pair of dice from his pocket, and kind of rolls them in his fingers, and he says, "It's true, the joint. He simply cannot. He cannot continue to lead this outpost. Corwin's
Who is
words.
indeed the superior. And she thinks for like the first time.
A superior in name only.
Well, who is the
Women hear the
superior?
truth here. I
I mean,
don't
is
know.
there anyone? Like, she's thinking about
Yeah,
Salamnic
so-
ranks.
Yeah, he is the highest ranking. Great.
Well, Darius's point is that we should give the snake in the grass the chance to declare himself a snake. And he pitches this idea of maybe taking Geraint down a peg with his consent. And if his second in command seems to step forward and assert his own power, then, well, we know who was the snake in the grass.
Isabel looks a little sad at this discussion, but she kind of nods and she says, Lord Alfric, before he passed, he confided in me that his greatest was regret that he felt he had failed his nephew. In honor of my Lord Alfric's memory, there is a chance to set Geraint on a better path. I should like to take it, but I think this is not the place for him to do so. Perhaps in this course we can convince him to leave the fort, not by force, if at all possible. I mean, she's obviously extremely, what's the word? When,
Then
Mutinous?
maybe I can be of assistance.
not futilist, but like she's
No,
not
I said-
an
I said-
optimist.
No, I was being facetious.
Fatalist.
I said mutinous.
Not mutinous. Like she wants
Reluctant.
him to find his way. She wants him to prove his uncle wrong for his uncle's sake. Like, you didn't fail me. And
Okay.
I don't know. Perhaps with the
He's
right
anti-elf,
guidance.
anti-dragonist.
Right. That's like, she wants to believe he could lead here, but his feeling, like the way he's expressed his bigotry, makes her think he can't. He just can't lead here, but maybe he could start to be a better person if he didn't have this shadow hanging over his shoulder. At least that's what...
Darius's argument would be that he can show his leadership in his true mettle by stepping down and creating the space we need to figure out this mystery.
I will tell you this. If we could prove that this... And we don't know for sure, but if this sorcerer had something to do with his uncle's death, I want to believe that he would not stand for it. I truly believed he loved Lord Alfric.
And maybe there's something I can help with. Today, when we are at the funeral of Lord Alfric, I will sing a song about his glory and the glory of the Solamnic Knights. But at that time, I shall also make a small song about our situation. Let us see what it does. I think with the Narakans leaving We must have leadership now. We do not have time for Geraint to find himself. He is an adult. He should have found himself if he is to be a leader.
Been under his uncle's shadow, and under the shadow of this one. I don't know. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps this is his chance. Only the gods know, but I do believe, and she looks at Aish, in the power of your song. Truly it moved me, and I have to believe that it could perhaps move him. Plant that seed.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt at this point because I'm going to take us across to something else that's happening. We're going to go over to Baldwin. Eleanor went looking for Baldwin on Isabeau's instructions, and he was nowhere to be found. And we cut over to Baldwin, who wakens and finds himself in the place where he went to sleep. And he sees Casa here as well, waking up and looking bleary. There seems to be something new hanging around her neck, some kind of amulet, where she normally carries her sort of wooden holy symbol. There now seems to be another version of it in shining silvery metal. And she's looking very bleary, which is just how Baldwin feels. And she looks round, looks at Baldwin, kind of starts, and then clutches at her neck, and then realizes this thing is really hanging there. And then pauses, looks up, mutters a prayer, and then a light springs forth from her hand. And she gasps. And then drops to her knees in prayer. Or kind of clambers onto her knees in prayer. All this without saying anything to Baldwin. How does he react?
He gets up with a start, again thinking perhaps it was a very vivid dream, but how real it felt, and then he awakens and sees that he's still here, and more to the point that Casa seems to be more herself and not who she was. And he gets up with difficulties, kind of wiping away the tiredness, and he gets over to her. He takes a knee, and it appears that the goddess has given you a gift.
She has. And she looks up and she's smiling, but there are tears streaming down her cheeks. I've wanted this for so long. I can really heal the sick now, Baldwin. Really heal them, like you do.
Perhaps even better. He looks at the necklace.
She smiles. But where are we? And you can see now that this place has a little bit of light coming in. There's early morning light coming into the top here. And something about this building just seems familiar. But you can see that this is the view in one direction, but in the other direction there are large double doors.
He looks around. I do not know. I believe that your goddess was speaking through you. Do you remember any of it?
I do not. I remember you speaking with her voice.
He smiles. A bit of trickery then, but the good sort, I think. Although he looks around again. He's not expecting to wake up here.
And she's looking around. She said, I don't recognize this place. My dream was... She kind of shudders and looks uncomfortable. Somewhere darker.
How do you mean?
And she kind of shakes her head and says, now is not the time. I can't quite make sense of it at the moment, but I'll tell you later.
Alright. Let's try to make sense of where we are now. And he looks and sees the double doors. And that appears to be the only way out.
Yep.
There's nowhere. Yeah, he gestures towards it. We have nowhere else to go but out unless we're planning to stay here.
And
head towards the door.
Yeah, she goes with you, and you reach the doors and presumably push them open.
Yes.
And as you first push, there's a flare of light from the doors and a kind of cracking noise. And then the doors swing open surprisingly easily, and you find yourself here. You're outside a building, and as soon as you step out from it, you recognize it, because although the building looks like this, the surroundings do not look like this. And you are here. The old abandoned temple, the one whose doors would never open. You find yourself standing out here. And in fact, at that moment, that's when the others see you. So the others of you, you're all there having this discussion in Rubrum's house. And then you suddenly see this old, locked, sealed temple. The doors open, and looking a little bit dazed and confused, Baldwin and Cassa, the Kenda cleric, walk out and seem to be taking in their surroundings.
Yeah, I think...
Isabel points.
Yeah, Martin says, I believe Baldwin has been drinking. Let us go talk to him.
Drinking? I think not. But she starts to kind of jog over.
And Baldwin, you see her coming over. You can also see these Knights of Naraka packing up, and that, people are looking, kind of not really getting much work done. They're standing around and talking. There seems to be a tension in the air.
Baldwin!
She kind of gets a little faster as she's approaching. She looks confusedly over at the Kender.
And Cassa, who's now wearing a shining medallion of faith, kind of looks across at you and smiles and nods.
I'm sorry, I don't know you.
This is Mina. She's been assisting me in the infirmary. Mina, this is Isabel.
She laughs and she says, Cassa, you mean Cassa? And then she kind of taps the symbol around her neck. She says, Cleric, Mina. And she smiles at you. But it sounds like your experiences of last night may have caused some confusion in that regard.
A great deal, yes, it seems. I mean, respect it, Isabel. This is Cassa, cleric of Mina.
Isabel tries to remember her manners.
Casa.
She kind of inclines her head like she would to any cleric.
Greetings, I'm afraid. And she looks over at Baldwin. Baldwin, where have you been?
Cassa kind of says, I will leave you two to talk, and she heads over to the infirmary.
Yeah, he nods to her, and then... It's a strange tale, but I think through a dream, but Mina and I, Cassa and I ended up in the temple somehow.
You can
Strange
see that her eyes are red-rimmed, probably as you're talking to her.
Yeah. Strange things are afoot. What has happened? Are the Narakans leaving? Or...
She bites her lip and she nods.
Lord Alfric, he's dead. Well, it looks like the plague, but it's not the plague. Baldwin, Rubram, he consented to have a look, and he says it's necromancy. And I spoke to Lord Corin of the Norakans, and I truly believe he had nothing to do with it. And I don't believe it was Garant, and there's this fellow shadowing him, and maybe he's in league with another of the Norakans, and
Isabel.
Baldwin, I am in over my head.
Be calm. Where he just tries to process it all, but he takes a deep breath. Where are the others?
She
Speaking
looks
where are the others?
over at Darius.
There's Darius and Aish and Rubram. I don't know where everyone is. Eleanor, and he whispers, I have her shadowing the sorcerer, but she's no spy. Honestly, and she thinks on it, perhaps Darius would be better suited, but
She kind of reaches out and grabs his arm. I need your help. I need your guidance. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Ghost, I need Baldwin to make a wisdom save, a wisdom check, rather. Just because of the impact on him of what she's saying.
Save.
Yeah, I let it be a save last time, so let's go for that. This is just about willpower, basically. Yeah, he was kind of pushed into remembering all this stuff last night, and now he's got this. You know what I'm talking about, right? He's suddenly having Isabeau say this, and it's just really hitting home. How does he react?
Yeah, Isabeau would see Baldwin when she mentions the plague. Baldwin would open his mouth to say something, and then his eyes would just kind of go somewhere else. He's looking very far out, and if you could see in his head, what he's seeing is Darisgard, somebody's skin turning inside out, somebody melting to pieces, the dead walking, all these terrible things. His brother dying, him cutting apart his master farm. He was just everything that he sees in his mind's eye, he's seeing again, and he's looking past Isabel.
Yeah, all she sees is a mask, and his silence and his stillness. And she waits, and she's,
Baldwin, do you hear me? I need your help. I don't know what I'm doing.
and, tears start to stream down her cheeks.
How do Darius, Ash, and Rubram react to all this? You've seen her running out, and now she probably says that last line a little bit louder than she intends, so you can all hear it because you're only about 30 feet away. You could even be closer if you want. But how do the three of you react?
I'll let them react first.
Well, Isabeau seems more shaken to find the person she leans on to seem. He's like distant, not reacting. Has maybe shaken her more than everything.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
Slip your mics really close to your mouth or something. You're getting a lot of...
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll move it.
Wait, Bo, you want to go? Oh, you dropped off.
He's back.
I dropped off for a second. Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, go ahead.
Rob also kicked me as soon as I made that comment. He booted me.
So, do you want to go first, Cypher? Because I think Bo might have missed the...
Oh yeah, sure. Ash looks at Isabeau and Baldwin, We'll be all right, Lady Isabel. We are all here. We may not know each other, but each of us, in our own way, have made through some difficult times. And we are here now. Give Baldwin some time. We have told him some difficult news. But for now, do not worry about the Narakan's Lord Geraint or the shadow behind him. Worry about the people and yourself first. And to that end, I believe they will be fine if you were their leader. Baldwin, the Weird One, Darius, myself, and Dalrend as well. We'll be here.
Yeah, Baldwin would hear the Ayesh's voice and start to come back. He's wait, so Alfric is dead. Geraint would be in charge. Why? What are we speaking about with Isabeau as the leader?
No, I can't be. Dread, next in line.
And she just seems unsure, but she's looking around at the people. All the people milling around and talking and seeming unsure, and some of them weeping. And she says, I know my place.
You do actually see Geraint as you're talking. He's coming down the steps of the mott with Kalinius behind him, almost kind of leaning forward to kind of whisper in his ear as they're talking and walking, and he's nodding. And then he kind of makes a gesture and Kalinius kind of backs up in a deferential manner. And then Geraint gets to the bottom of the mott and sort of calls over, Isabeau, a word, if you please.
Of course, my lord.
She comes forward and she's, from her conversation with Baldwin still wiping at her eyes, and she walks forward to Geraint.
And he looks uncomfortable. He looks genuinely uncomfortable to see the emotion and sort of says, I will give you a moment. And he kind of looks away.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine, Lord. This emotions, they can wait. They can wait. If you can wait, I can wait.
I knew you had strength in you. Yeah, and it doesn't surprise you that he associates strength with suppressing emotion.
Right.
And he looks to you and he says, I have a job for you. I have a post for you, a commission for you, if you will. I would like you to take over command of the auxiliary from Garen. He's a good man in his way, but, you're a noble. Born to command, and you seem to be able to talk to that rabble that tags along after you. Quite frankly, they can be your problem now, Isabeau. So please, no, not please. I command you to take command of the auxiliary.
She looks at him in the eye for a moment, and she nods at him, almost like approvingly.
Of course, my lord.
As you command. And she kind of gives a bow, almost going to an, kind of a sweeping bow, not mockingly. And she says, anything I can do to serve. And she says, I am honored by your vote of confidence.
And he nods and says, just one thing. You may recruit into the auxiliary if you wish, but not the red-haired one. He has insulted the honor of my family. And he nods to you and then turns. And you see Kalinius, this sorcerer, just watching you. Just this quiet, very conservatively dressed figure in severe black. And he's looking at you and just tapping his finger against his thin lips.
She gives him a glance. Can I roll an insight check? just to see
Sure.
just her take on him, basically. Ah, no idea. The goatee
Close
makes
book.
everyone look evil.
Yes. Yes. You don't know about him, but his goatee is definitely
She's like,
evil.
but my uncle has a goatee. It's so nice.
Yeah. So yeah, do you he returns to the keep. Do you return back to the others?
Yeah, well, so she's taking charge from him.
Yes. And
Okay.
and great, as he gets halfway back up the steps and something occurs to him, he stops and says, oh, and tell Garen, won't you? And carries on back up to the keep.
She, without knowing she's doing it, shakes her head slightly, like in disapproval, like that's not what a leader does. And she stops herself. Like she doesn't half know she's doing it, but she stops over here and she says, "Might I speak with you for a moment?"
Garen looks and says, yeah, of course, my lady. How's it going? I mean, good day to you. That's what you lot say. I mean, yeah. He looks a bit uncomfortable. He goes, look, I'll be honest, I'm not that comfortable having a noble under my command.
Well,
The rest of the lads, fine. And, he calls everyone, male and female, lads.
lads.
Yeah.
Garen, do I have your permit? I'm going to speak frankly. You seem a man of frankness.
Oh, yeah, that I am.
Lord Grant is the ranking officer here now. And
Yep, God's help us.
she kind of gives a slight nod and says, he lacks an experience. And he is relying, this whole fort is relying on all of us to shore up what he lacks in experience. If you catch my meaning.
Not sure I do. I mean, I've served under crap officers before. I mean...
She puts a hand on his shoulder and says, she just kind of shakes her head and says, he has certain preferences, and as you've said, I'm a lady of noble birth, and he seems to feel that despite my lack of experience, and she kind of rolls her eyes, that I should be put in charge of, well, the auxiliary. And
this is to do with his, and he kind of gives you a wink and goes, preferences?
She just kind of chuckles and she says, I'm here to do whatever I can. Whatever I can to keep order here, to keep peace, to protect the people, and I'm going to do whatever I can. And I know from the moment I stepped in here that you were the same sort.
And he nods and he goes, wow, I don't know I'd go to that degree though. I mean, you're really, well, taking one for the team. Thank you. And
she says,
he nods.
Please. I'm going to be relying on your experience, she says. Without you, I can't do this.
And he looks really confused. He goes, I don't understand.
You know,
I mean, we're talking
place.
about the same thing. I mean,
you know all the men. You know this fort. You know everything about it. You know Grant better than I do. You know that shadow man, that sorcerer that seems to be shadowing him. You know everything. Will you be my counselor?
Sure. I mean, look, you don't have to sleep with Doreen if you don't want to.
No, that's certainly not my intent. That would have to be approved by the crown.
And now he's really confused. And he sort of goes, all right, okay.
Just knowing how things work around here. You know the locals, you know everything. I've been here for 3 days.
Yeah. You don't think he's grasped the core concept?
Yeah, she just kind of claps him on the shoulder and says, you're a good man. Because she thinks he'll get that.
Yeah, it goes, well, thank you. I think you're great too.
All right then. Thank you so much for your vote of confidence.
Right. And he looks really confused.
And she's just like, okay, he's not going to be a prick about it.
No, but he also doesn't quite understand what you were telling him. I don't think he's grasped the core concept that you're his commander now. But yeah, you don't think he's going to object. Yeah.
Yeah. And she walks over to the Dragonborn. What's his name again?
Artesh.
Artesh, yes.
Hopefully you can see it now.
Yeah, I can't.
You gotta go in their tokens and you gotta toggle the viewable to everyone, the tag, the name. Probably. That would be my guess.
Oh, I know what it is. Yeah, that's what it is. I toggled the visibility on the wrong thing. Do you see it now?
Okay, yep, see it now.
Okay, toggled the wrong thing.
And she says to Artesh and maybe Eleanor, who are standing together, and she says, well, Grant has put me in charge of the auxiliary. I don't think that puts me in charge of either of you. So thank God. My lord, what's Kiri Jolif? And just letting you know, and if you have any advice for me, I'm always open to hearing it, and just kind of bows to both of them.
And they bow back. And Eleanor says, I wasn't really able to do much with following him. He's just been hanging around after Geraint. He kind of whispers in his ear. It's creepy.
Do you know where his quarters are? Eleonora?
And she sort of looks and says, no, well, he lives here in the village. Yeah, I can tell you where he lives, yeah. But he always told us not to, go in. He said there are magical wards.
I don't expect you to go in. Please go tell. And she kind of points to Darius, whatever you know. And you can take it from here.
Ah, right. Okay. And then she trots over to Darius and says, sir, and then she kind of like seems to just kind of remember who she is, and she goes, auxiliary.
Yes, ma'am, my lady, yes.
Eleonora will be fine. Isabel, has she been put in charge of something?
I don't know if she's necessarily been put in charge of anything, but perhaps she should be in charge. I mean, she commands my respect.
And mine. Look, she wanted me to tell you where Kalinius lives. And she points out the house and says, look, I don't know what she's planning. I mean, I'm sure she wouldn't do anything against the measure.
She wouldn't do anything. Of course, she wouldn't do anything. But
if you are
tell me.
Thinking of, he warned us, Kalinius, some time ago that he warded his house with magic and said it would be very dangerous for anyone who tried to enter unannounced. Just telling you.
Of course. Of course, it's something any good wizard or warlock or sorcerer would do. Yes. Is there anything else?
No, that's it.
Isabeau, she's a capable leader, no? I would follow her to the end, to the bitter end.
Yes, she reminds me of the knight I used to serve back when I was a squire.
Darius kind of does look at Eleonora a little bit and has a human or half-elf moment.
Yeah, you can see even you think even for a human she's young.
Yeah, and he says very authentically, I would like to hear that story sometime, Eleanor. Sometime outside this outpost. With a fire and perhaps a bit of ale or a glass of wine, if that's your flavor, but I would love to hear it.
She smiles and said, it's not a story for night, it's a story for the day. And she smiles, it's dark enough without being told at night.
Even the best stories at night, with the appropriate music, can be uplifting. Is that not right, Ash? He looks around.
Of course. Aish is uplifting and so is his music.
She smiles and nods and says, well, perhaps one night at the inn then. Anyway, I really must be going. And she looks a little flustered and turns to leave. I'm just watching the time, so unless anyone objects, I'm going to fast forward to the evening and to the funeral of Lord Alfric.
Yeah, one thing real quick. I don't think this will take long. Ruben kind of heads over towards Baldwin. He's just kind of been milling about, and he goes over to him and he says, "Ah, are you feeling better today?"
Baldwin clears his throat. Feeling better? In what way, Ruben?
Less hostile. Angry.
I was not angry with you. I was disappointed.
Are you feeling less disappointed?
No.
Well, I do apologize for threatening you. I should not have done that.
I accept your apology.
Wonderful. I was wondering if later perhaps you could swing by my new abode and we could speak on things that I did talk to your father about, but now he is very, very gone.
Yeah, Baldwin, he sets his jaw, but he nods. I will speak with you after the funeral, if that suits you.
Yes, unfortunately this man would not let me start the fire. It would burn hotter than anything he could do with a torch.
A sentimental thing I'm afraid you wouldn't understand.
True. Well, I look forward to our conversation. Do keep an open mind.
Yes. And that Baldwin's eyes narrow with suspicion at that, but he just nods tersely.
He walks off.
Yeah, you've get the feeling it's not often, Baldwin, you get the feeling it's not often that Ruben apologizes. This is...
No, at all, ever.
Yeah, it's quite a surprise. So you're quite intrigued. Okay, anyone else anything before I fast forward to the evening?
But just, Ruben wouldn't go to the funeral, he would just go to his house. Just so you know.
Okay. It might be best. You just get glared at by Geraint if you
Yeah,
can.
I mean, he just...
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Okay, we're gonna go over to Lord Alfric's funeral. They carry the body out through the through Northold, from the keep down the motte. And once they get down into the bailey, the people of the outpost are lined up along the route. The body is covered by a white sheet. You notice is wrapped a little tight, possibly because of the risk of disease. The body is being carried by Artesh, Eleonora, Geraint, and Isabeau, if she's happy to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
And the four of you carry his body outside the gates, and then a funeral pyre has been built not far from the outpost on a low rise of bare ground. And you stop there. And the body is laid atop the pyre. And Geraint says a few words, and then begins the ceremonial part. He begins the funeral rite, reciting Lord Alfric's deeds, commemorating his life, and then he moves on to the hymn that is always sung to a fallen knight. And he starts to recite it, but then you all become aware of I think a pipe is what Aesh has. Is that right, Nex?
Yeah, it's now a reed flute.
Nice. It's that starts to slowly kick in, and his voice dies away as Aesh begins to sing.
And starts off like a, whisper. The torches that people are holding it's burning, and there's a slight wind that kicks up and pushes the flames out further. There are all people standing around this lord of this keep. Everyone has their head bowed, and Geraint is trying to recite the death chant, but from what little time that Aesh has spent in the keep, it's his hobby to know what he can when he can, and he saw on the various tapestries of the song of this saga that is told about these knights, and the song they sing in honor of those who have fallen. And as he starts, it goes something like this: return this man to Huma's breast, beyond the wild, impartial skies. Grant to him a warrior's rest, and set the last spark of his eyes. Free from the smothering clouds of war upon the torches of the stars, let the last surge of his breath take refuge in the cradling air. Upon the dreams of ravens where only the hawk remembers death, then let his shade to Huma rise beyond the wild, wild impartial skies. And as he sings the last verse, he kind of gets the crowd also going. So everybody around, says the last few lines of, then let his shade to Huma rise beyond the wild, wild impartial skies. Now people are kind of looking up. There seems to be a swelling of like resurgence, like, the deflation that people have felt all day long seems to be slowly ebbing away as they all sing in honor of their Lord. And then Ash changes the tune just ever so slightly, and then he kind of looks, and at this point nobody's noticed, but he's climbed up some stairs and then found a parapet, and then a higher parapet than that, and he's kind of standing above the crowd as, getting their complete and undivided attention. And he looks to the west as the sun is just about to set, and the last rays of the sunset are like shooting up towards the sky just before darkness sets. And he says, our days are now dark, as our guidesman seems to be a lark. And when he says guidesman, he turns his head towards Geraint. We look to the four directions to the sky as we look for our captain this night. So now we look to Our Lady for strength, and when he says that, he moves his head. Everybody sees him move his head and look directly at Isabeau. To march us to our glory, to stand tall in the face of our enemy, we look to Our Lady, for she will lead us all to our glory. Yep, 1 minute. Comments.
Okay.
I think Isabeau moves toward Garand and he says, trying to shift. Maybe she even thinks that he's talking about the goddess Mashakal of healing and goodness, the healing of a bruised heart. And she says to him, indeed, my lady, our Lady Mashakal, heal the wound in all of our hearts this night. And she just kind of murmurs that next to Garand.
And Garand looks, he was looking at Ash with confusion that was starting to veer towards hostility, but when you say that, he says, yes.
And she kind of turns to him and whispers, and I don't know where the sorcerer guy is, but he's close. She's going to try to talk in a low enough voice that he can't hear.
Okay.
She may or may not succeed, but she's going to say,
yep.
Lord Alfric, he and I spent some time together these past few days, and perhaps it is his fondness for my aunt. The possibility that in another life we might, she looks at him, you and I, Grant, even be cousins, that had him speak so freely. He spoke to me that his greatest fear had been that he had failed you. He loved you so. And that his greatest hope. And she kind of puts a hand out toward him, very gently, very, almost cautiously over his heart, that you would find that compass within yourself.
And as
I seek myself.
As you reach out to him, he kind of steps back, and Kalinius steps forward away from Darius, who's been moving slowly up behind him. And Kalinius steps forward and says, you overstep, madam. He's grieving. And he's whispering.
She looks from Kalinius over to Grant, and she just looks at Grant in the eyes and tries to make a connection. I don't know what roll you'd make to make a connection.
It'll be a charisma check.
Okay, that's what she's
just straight charisma, not a charisma save, just charisma check.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So you have plus
she's
2
hot,
on that.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's going to be 9. It's actually going to be 19 because the save you probably got.
Oh, okay. Okay, 19.
Yeah,
still pretty
19. Good. Yeah. And he steps back, and then he stops and steps forward again and lets you put your hand over his heart, and then he puts his hand over yours.
She says, do I overstep, my lord?
And he kind of opens his mouth and says in a raw, almost whispering voice, no, you do not.
And she just kind of bows her head. Like, she's not trying to make this sexual. She's just trying to be like a friend.
Yeah. You're not quite sure what way he's taken it in.
Right. But that's her intent.
Yeah. People sometimes misunderstand things. Kalinius, you hear, Darius, you hear him hiss in frustration. It really is. It's like... And
she looks up at him and she says, you are Lord Alfric's nephew. The strength that flowed through him certainly flows through you also. Look to your uncle's life to guide you, and you cannot err. You cannot err.
Darius, could you please make a perception check? Oh, interesting. Okay, you see a couple of people in the amongst the mourners that you haven't seen before. One of them is a wizard in red robes, an older man. You're sure you've never seen him before. And also, you see something quite interesting. You see a woman you've seen once before. Let me drop her token onto here if I can find it. Here. She's wearing kind of greens and browns, very kind of natural kind of colours. And you're pretty sure that you've seen her once before, which was when she was one of the members of the Legion of Steel who freed you all from the caravan. And she has a really odd expression on her face. She's looking across at Isabeau and Geraint. Can you make an insight check, please? Okay. Yeah, her expression is complex, but you can tell that for some reason she doesn't like Isabeau being, as Isabeau stepped up to Geraint, she was looking on with a kind of interest in the situation, and then when Geraint stepped forward, her jaw clenched, and she looks tense and hostile. But she sees you looking across at her, and she looks away from the whole scene, and looks back towards the funeral pyre, which is now ablaze. And she looks down, and you can see her muttering a prayer. But it's like she kind of came to herself and then realised that what she was here for, and muttered that prayer.
Anyway, Isabeau doesn't say much more. She just kind of leans in and she says, "Trust that heart, that Lord Alfric. Though he was not your father, he acted as your father."
Yes.
So just narratively, as this is a movie, this, the camera is going from Isabeau to Geraint over to Kalinius and Darius, who's kind of shifting in and out of the crowd, maybe with a cloak over his head, and just kind of as the camera pans around, you see you even see Ayash kind of, there's a cut scene of him playing his lute or instrument up there, singing the tune, kind of drawing everybody's attention, and there's all these moving parts, and you see a flash of a dagger in Darius's hand, and then he looks to his left and sees this familiar elf form with a green cloak overhead, and there's a flash of the dagger and a hint of hesitation, and again it is sheathed in his side as he kind of melts back into the crowd.
Nice. And I think unless anyone has anything else to say, we will end it there. Any closing RP from anyone?
That's it for me. She's trying with all her willpower to find the good that's in Lord Alfric and Geraint.
Cool.
Nothing from me.
Okay.
Nah, he just needs a knife. He just needs a knife in the liver.
Solve everyone's problems. Yeah. And we'll just cut back before we finish to Rubrum's house. And what do we see Rubrum doing as the scene fades?
He's sitting by the fireplace. The fire. You're not sure when you look over his shoulder if he's purposely messing with it, but the flames like rise up and out of the fireplace a bit, and then kind of calm down, and then go back in and lower to ember, and then shoot up as he's just kind of staring in the fire without anything else, just intently staring forward into the flames.
Cool. And with that, we'll end the session. Thank you very much, everyone.
Good sesh.